Welcome, reanimated fans, on this wonderful Sunday. I am H.A. Conrad, coming to you from Brooklyn, and joining me is my truly intrepid co-host, battling forest fires, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Oh, come now. The forest fires are 100 miles away. I just happen to be in the unfortunate position of being downwind of them.
Well, how is it out there in the apocalypse?
I haven't been outside in several days. If that gives you any indication. It's been really smoky, and it's like hazardous levels of bad air quality out there. Today I had high hopes that this was going to be an improved day. I think the particulate matter is down, but the haze is coming back in, so we're just at the mercy of the wind right now, which is too bad. Obviously, 100 miles upwind of here, people are having a much worse time.
Right. So is there anything, with your house, is there anything special you have to do with, air filtering, or what? Do you have, basically a built-in HEPA on the house, or is it just
No.
kind of you close up everything and hope for the best?
We have new windows on the house, actually, this year, so those are doing a great job of keeping the smoke out, but typically just normal, keeping your house closed up is going to be enough, unless you have, really sensitive lungs or, an asthmatic condition or something. And it smelled a little bit like smoke in here on the first day when the, I don't know what these numbers mean, but you go to this website, Purple Air, and it shows you your neighborhood is 400, and the color is dark purple, and that's really bad, but I don't know exactly what that means, if it's 400 parts per, air.
I think that means you're not rowing that day.
No, I definitely haven't been rowing. And today, let's see. So it was 400 on the first day when it got really bad. And today, I think we are in the 200s. But it's still red. And it still means no bueno. So we stay inside. We put masks on the kids. And there's not a whole lot you can do.
Yeah. Are the kids okay wearing them? That seems like something that as a kid I would have been like, no.
It's fun.
Fun. All right. Well, I hope for a swift change of weather in the right direction, and
some rain, man.
Some rain, and to distract you from this, I think we should talk about some zombie news.
Yeah.
And then launch into our review of Overlord, which just came out. Was just released in the U.S. last week.
It was just released a couple days ago, right? Yeah, let's do this. Shall I take the first one?
Go for it.
So, now that if you've been watching this season of The Walking Dead, you might know that it's time for Norman Reedus to take over the show. Because Rick Grimes' last episode was last week. Or rather, Andrew Lincoln's last episode on The Walking Dead was last week. Read into that what you will. So, Daryl's salary was kind of leaked somehow. And it turns out he's making $1 million per episode.
Yeah, I'm not shocked at this at all.
So which means it's 16 episodes a season, right? Around 16. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty decent. I wonder how it's gone up since the beginning of the show.
Oh, I'm sure it has. I mean, there's just no way it has not given, and especially as it goes on and his character is so beloved, I'm sure that gives him some leverage to increase that salary. And I would imagine Andrew Lincoln's was much above that, or a little bit above that. So, I think that given, especially if you're in a position where your character has this huge fan following, and they need you've got some negotiation tactics to use. But
I wonder what Lauren Cohan ended up getting after her little attempt to get paid more. Awesome. I mean, also, this article is from Digital Spy, and they have a few other folks. Like Julia Roberts is on this Amazon Prime show called Homecoming, and she makes $600,000 an episode. Henry Cavill is going to get $400,000 for the upcoming Netflix. I think it's a Netflix version of The Witcher, which they had that teaser first look. I don't know, you've probably never played The Witcher, but thought it looks pretty good, at least as far as his character goes. And then Anthony Mackie is going to be in Altered Carbon. This is second season, at $475,000 an episode. Anthony Mackie plays Hawkman? Is that his? I can never remember the name of his Avenger.
Yeah, I think it's Hawkman.
Hawkman, kind of lame, but I'm sure he'll be great. He's a good actor. I'm sure he'll be
Yeah.
great in the science fiction future of Altered Carbon. That show was so cool.
Well, I mean, if you think about when you look at, because a while ago they had a listing of all the top paid actors and across like a lot of different shows and things like that. And for a very long time, Mark Harmon was like the top paid man worldwide for
Oh
NCIS.
yeah, for NCIS because
So
that show's
I
been
know.
at the top of the ratings for so long.
Right. So, I mean, I think I can't be shocked that Norman Reedus is pulling in this kind of coin because they have, I mean, and look at the franchise as a whole, how lucrative it has been. Even though the ratings are down, they're still making so much money across all sort of like crazy spectrum. So, good for Norman. And let's hope it keeps him there for a little while, and let's see if they can reimagine a little bit of the show so that his character can be a leading man. But I mean, I was having this discussion with somebody the other day, which is that, these kinds of characters, there's a reason why they're more, I don't want to call them sidekicks, but they're more sort of like, they're better the smaller, like if you have like small doses of them, you love them so much, but they can't necessarily carry a film unless you recreate them in some way. Han Solo, and the Han Solo movie is a pretty good example of
Oh,
this.
bite your tongue! Han Solo movie is precious. I love it.
I loved the Han Solo movie, but I think that a lot of people felt like that was part of why it wasn't able to. You and I are actually in the minority on this point. I have had some pretty intense conversations with people about this film and people who just loathed it, and I feel like they didn't even watch the same film that I did. But
Yeah. Okay, that's bizarre.
but I felt like that movie suffered from a variety of things. One of which was very poor marketing on the part of everything that I saw didn't even resemble what the actual film was. Though I do feel like the actor who played Han Solo kind of sucked. And so I think he worked hard. I mean, that was actually part of it. They were going to pull him for a while and had to get him coaching because he was so bad. So I think he managed to pull it off ultimately through the genius of editing and other things. But generally the reason why sidekicks work is that they're kind of like the sort of breath of fresh air to sort of offset the intensity of the main character or the seriousness of the main character. So we'll see what happens on this show.
Well,
But
certainly Daryl has never been a breath of fresh air on this show. He's always
well,
just been he's
not
been like the executioner. He's been like
he's
your badass cousin who lives out in the trailer in the forest. And so Norman Reedus
this is
keeps
true,
saying, like, when he's getting interviewed right now, he's like, yeah, I haven't had many lines in the last couple of
right?
years. In the last couple of years, he hasn't had much
Yeah,
dialogue on this show.
he
So
just kind of looks smoldering, and that's kind of what they do with
yeah,
him.
and he does funny things with his hands to make them look like lethal. I think he's worked so much on his body language that yeah, it's funny. Either way, so Norman Reedus makes a lot of money. I think he's worth it, but we'll have to see if the writers do a good job making his character earn that, I guess. The actor earns it, the character maybe doesn't.
Right.
And I would also just like to throw in a pitch for Angela Kang as showrunner. I think she's doing a bang up job. I think this season of The Walking Dead is the best one in years so far.
Right.
And we're
And
only like 5
probably we
episodes
should,
in.
and since you brought up Angela, we should talk about the fact that she just confirmed a rumor about and conjecture about where Heath has been.
Yeah.
So that was kind of funny. And basically, there were a couple of like Easter eggs lying around because we saw something that looked like his RV. And she confirmed that he had been, quote unquote, given up as an offering from the what are their names? I'm sorry, I cannot. I can never
junk
repeat
people?
these. The junk people. And supposedly he may make, and part of this is because the actor, got a ton of opportunities for a few other things. Black Klansman, 24 was the other one, I think. And supposedly
It's
he
Straight
may
Outta
make,
Compton and Kong
and
Skull
yeah,
Island. Yeah, he did a bunch of movies and a new series. So the dude just got too busy to be like
yeah.
13th fiddle on The Walking
Yeah.
Dead because Heath was
But
not a major character in any way.
But he may make a reappearance in some other projects that have been kind of announced. So We'll see what happens with that, and that may make it a little bit easier for him to participate and make a reappearance, so to speak. But speaking of reappearances, we have this news that basically a very long, unproduced sequel to Night of the Living Dead is supposedly going to be coming our way next year. I don't know how I feel about this because they keep like touting that this is by the same team that brought us Night of the Living Dead, which is like, well, Romero's dead, dude, so I don't know about that, but I mean, I guess you could have some people involved in that original project, but they're keeping a lot of it under wraps. I think it has a pretty steep hill to climb for it to sort of get. They are waxing poetic over this thing without knowing what it's about, so we'll see what happens. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, part of their official website has a Kickstarter. So and they've raised $15,000 towards their goal of $25,000. So if they're throw an epic party with the official Night of the Living Dead party Kickstarter. So it's just, I'm not sure exactly what they're trying to raise money for with this Kickstarter. It looks like they're selling koozies and playing cards. When Romero died, we had heard news that his daughter, I believe, was making a movie in the universe.
Yeah, and maybe this is it.
And I wonder if this is it, or the thing is, obviously, she was not in the original production crew of the 1968. No. But yeah, I don't know. I'll hold out hope that it'll be okay. I think that saying that it's a lot of the original people behind it, obviously, like you said, not likely. And if it is, then how much work have they been doing recently?
Right. So we'll see what happens. Maybe they'll have fun with it. We'll see. And the news item I found, which, you know, I don't know. I just thought that some of the photos of this stuff was like, what? So this gentleman who everybody is calling like a Negan-esque like character, he's basically a doomsday prepper that they picked up in Liverpool, and basically had basically brought together a ton of insane weapons, including like a couple Lucille like bats and other crazy stuff. And so without, you know, and I guess the police in Liverpool got tipped off about him, and they took him in because he seems a little nutty. He looks a little nutty too.
I'm confused why they would arrest a guy just for having weapons. Like, what was the actual charge?
I don't think it was just because of that. I think they're not saying, but I would imagine he was threatening or doing something which made them pick him up. Because, you know, either, like, my guess is there's something more to this story than we're getting, but, because I agree with you. But also in the UK, there are very specific rules about things that you can have.
Yeah, but this is Liverpool, Ohio. HA.
Oh, it's Liverpool, Ohio?
Yeah.
Oh,
home
sorry,
of people where people can have guns and be crazy as they want to be.
So I'm changing my tack on this. I guess I read that news story a little too quickly. So my guess is that he was out there threatening something, and given the sensitivity these days, I would say they probably picked him up based on cause. I would say you're going to probably find that there were some Twitter posts or Facebook posts, and I can't imagine he was just sitting there quietly with his Lucille bat doing nothing, because how else would they know about it?
Yeah, apparently they were called about a strange man, but even that doesn't really give you PC to search a car.
I think there's a lot more going on, especially given now that we know it's in Ohio, or that I know it's in Ohio. I think there has to be more cause to check out what's going on with him. So I guess if you're doomsday prepping,
try not to be weird. Try to just be like on the DL about it, you guys. Gosh.
Yeah, be cool about it. So yeah.
Speaking of things being cool.
Yes.
Have you seen the new the trailer for The Kingdom, the upcoming zombie show set in medieval Korea? Hot dog.
It looks great. I'm really excited about this.
It looks like it's got. Yeah, from the trailer anyway, it looks like there's actually a lot of politics and like royal historical drama, and then
all my favorite things like martial arts and zombies. Yeah. It's amazing.
And then there's going to be a whole bunch of zombies too. So I'm extremely excited. I'm trying to remember if this is a show or a movie. Do you have?
I thought they said it was a series, so I feel like maybe it is
Yeah,
a similar to other things. Maybe it is a Netflix series that they will release all at once, which is what I'm kind of hoping because then I can binge watch it. I don't
yeah.
think it's a movie.
I
It
think it's a
sounded like it.
series. It starts. It says the mystery begins on January 25th. So we've still got to wait a few months, which is the bummer. But then I think it's going to be episodes, which is great. So
Sweet. I'm excited about
very
this.
excited, very excited. Like, yeah, we haven't seen. I don't think you or I have ever reviewed a historical zombie film really at this point, other than World War II. We haven't gone much further back than that.
Not really. Well, and actually, some of the stuff from this trailer reminded me a little bit of World War Z, or like the chapter in World War Z where they talk about the origination of the of where the zombie virus or whatever comes from, and I think it's in China, not Korea, obviously, but they do this whole thing where there's something like in the water where and they're kind of
Yeah,
hiding it.
yeah.
So this sort of visuals of this reminded me of that description. So I'm wondering, and there's a lot in that book which talks specifically about the secrecy and because of the political power and sort of all the leveraging going on that they kept it under wraps. So I think that will be an interesting. I'm interested to see what they do with this. It looks great from what I'm seeing on this trailer. I was like, yes.
Yeah, for real.
So,
So bring it on,
so
Kingdom. Can't wait. And I guess is that all the news
that's.
we have?
I think that is it for now, and so I think we can jump into our recap review of Overlord.
Awesome.
Though I will say we don't usually do reviews this close to an actual film release date. So I would say, full disclosure, we are going to be spoiling some stuff. We're not quite sure how much of a deep dive we're going to go into this, but I definitely think if you're planning to see this, don't listen to this yet. Go and see it, and then come back and listen. So, with that big red light, I don't know what you call it, like
Red
alarm
light.
bell,
Yeah.
red light of warning. Let's get into it.
Okay, so can I start off with a gripe right off the bat?
Okay.
Well, we went to see this because this is J.J. Abrams' Overlord.
Well, it's
And
produced by him.
I know, but I just don't understand. That was their marketing strategy, was to say this is J.J. Abrams' Overlord. And then he is
You know
he's a
better to
producer.
you know better than to buy into that magic. Come
I,
on.
I I guess I should, but all right. I just still don't really understand how this industry works. And that's fine.
It's all hype and smoke and mirrors. But the thing that was coming. This was so. At least my sense of this particular project was that people were making a lot of conjectures because it was under like cover of night and all this other stuff that it was going to be a new Cloverfield-esque
Yeah.
thing, and I think that that's a little bit of a bait and switch, and that they did keep this very much under wraps, and I think they were just having fun with it, honestly, because it is somewhat ridiculous given the amount of secrecy that came out with it. It has like a surprisingly wide release, at least in New York, not in every theater, but in quite a few, which I guess is the Bad Robot Magic and Money.
Yeah.
And you were able to see it, which says
That
a
tells you
lot.
something. It was on two screens at the theater at my one of my local theaters that does like blockbusters. So yeah, I mean, it might just be that there's a paucity of other like good
Yeah,
films
maybe.
out right now, so they're like, yeah, let's double dip on Overlord. But it's definitely
However,
yeah,
yeah, I will say that timing wise, this was supposed to come out ahead of Halloween weekend, which would have made a lot more sense.
a lot of
But
sense.
they had to delay it. So instead, just in time for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and well, Veterans Day, but still, it's not like World War II has a big anniversary this year. It's really a World War One. But
Right.
yeah, not all these timings can work out. So here we go. Cast and crew. This was directed by a guy called Julius Avery, and this is really his second feature film. His other feature film was something called
Son of a gun.
Son of a Gun. That's right, and it's a Ewan McGregor Australian picture. I don't know if this guy's Australian, but all he's really done is that film, a bunch of shorts, and then this. So I don't know. We haven't not having seen the previous thing that he's done. Uh, it's kind of hard to weigh this. Of course, this is also generally this is a B movie. It's definitely it comes right in line with that other World War II Nazi zombie movie that we not the Norwegian ones or the Danish ones rather, but what was that other one we saw, like Franken
Yeah, it was like
zombie or something? The Army of Dr. Frankenstein, I think it was called.
yeah. And that was this actually. I kept getting flashbacks of that while watching this. So.
Yeah, there were some scenes, especially when when they're in the compound, the enemy base, where you're having those flashbacks to that. Except, strangely, that movie had way more zombies in it than this one did. And I'm not trying to be negative about this movie. I mostly enjoyed it, I think. But yeah, back to credits. Billy Ray wrote the story and shared the responsibilities for writing the screenplay with Mark Smith. And Billy Ray has some interesting work in his background. He wrote Captain Phillips and The Hunger Games.
Yep.
And there's actually an actor or two who have some of that pedigree also in common. So I think there were some, that they make these connections with people. So the guy who played Tibbet, I believe, was in Captain Phillips. And then into the cast, mostly a bunch of Brits.
Well, except for Wyatt Russell, who is Kurt Russell's and Goldie Hawn's son.
And a former
who was
professional
a
hockey player.
So,
Kind of looks like a hockey
obvious.
player, doesn't he?
He totally looks like a hockey player.
But he's not the lead. He is the second fiddle to Jovan Adepo,
Jovan.
who plays Ed Boyce, who does a great job.
Yep, and he was also in. I actually recognized him from Jack Ryan, but he's been in.
He was in Jack Ryan?
Things. Yep, he was one of the analysts. That's like, you need to listen to what I'm saying.
I don't remember the analysts.
If you look him up, I mean, it wasn't like a super huge role, but it was memorable.
Okay, so he works for Greer, and Jack Ryan occasionally goes into his office and says, "I need a map of these lookouts," and he'll be like, "Okay," something like that.
Yeah. Something like that.
Okay.
He played Marcus.
Mathilde Olivier is the lady. It's kind of your surrogate for French resistance.
Yep.
Person.
Oh,
in this.
And let's go back to Jovan for a second. But what he's known for is The Leftovers, which I have not really.
I've never seen.
But he was like a major cast member on that for 2 years. So that's probably what he's known best for. But I recognized him from Jack Ryan because that's what I saw him in. So.
Well, he plays like an anti-hero, kind of like an unexpected hero, like the guy who everybody thinks is going to be bad at being a soldier, or at least Tibbet, because Tibbet's just a jerk, and they constantly giving Boyce a hard time, and but
and Boyce, I mean, and in terms of Jovan as an actor, he's probably on the cusp of I mean, he's already been nominated because he was in the film Fences, so he was nominated for a lot of stuff when he was in that. So I mean, I think he was almost the perfect star for this, because that's kind of, I bet you anything we see him in something like insanely major. Like he seems like on the cusp of like suddenly he'll be in like every film for the next 2 years or something like that.
Maybe. So. I mean, him or John Boyega, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I liked him a lot, and I thought that he played this. To me, he made the film. I thought he played.
What's his story? It's the story. The story is just all about this character of Ed Boyce, effectively, and it's his moral dilemmas that kind of drive the plot. So then we got John Magaro, who plays Tibbet, who is I didn't really love this character.
I didn't love the character, but they kind of made him the sort of surly comic relief with all the like one-liners and. Especially with his relationship with the kid, Paul.
Eventually,
who I loved. I love that kid.
The kid is great.
He plays the Norman Reedus role because he only has like a couple lines, but he actually has a major part in this film.
Yeah, he has a lot of scenes. He has a lot of scenes where people are in horrifying makeup. So props to you, Gianni Taufer. Hopefully you have been able to sleep since you did this picture.
I know this poor little guy.
Ian DeKestiker, I don't know how you say his last name, but he's a Scottish dude. He plays Chase, and even though it's kind of a small-ish part, I freaking love this guy on S.H.I.E.L.D., Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You ever seen that TV show?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
he plays Fitz or Patrick, or Fitz, is it Fitzpatrick? Fitzsimmons.
Oh.
He plays Fitzsimmons.
Fitzsimmons.
One of those two. I forget which one he is. He's Simmons or Fitz. I can never remember. But he leaves his Scottish accent at home for this movie and puts on an American and does a great job. And I just love him and everything. And he also has an amazing kind of outro scene in this film.
Yes, he does.
And then Grey Worm himself, Jacob Anderson. Do you know who he was?
Yes.
He has like one line or three,
Yep.
and then gets blown up. But Grey Worm from Game of Thrones is in this movie too. Kind of like a really throwaway small part, but okay.
I was excited to see him, and then I was equally sad to see him leave so quickly. I was like, "Yeah, he's in this. Oh, good for you!"
This movie,
and then it was like, "Oh man."
It owes so much to like Saving Private Ryan and Band of Brothers, but it does seem to have a problem with being unable to develop its characters before it gets them killed.
Yeah.
So that he's one of those. Also, Bokeem Woodbine, one of my favorite people to mention on this podcast, who has bit parts in several things that we have reviewed.
Yep.
Bokeem Woodbine plays Sergeant Renson,
I know.
and he also has a ridiculously small and kind of unimpactful part in this movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, his death scene is fine, but the scene of him on the airplane kind of got me in the wrong mood. I did not enjoy the airplane part of this
Yeah,
this
I
film.
would I actually was thinking of you, and I was like, I have a feeling Stewart is going to lose his mind over this particular scene.
Especially when they're all like they're trying to have this conversation as they're flying into a combat zone, which is at least they're yelling to each other, but it's so loud on these aircraft. It's really hard to talk. And then this door opens at the front of the plane, like there's a special office up there or something for the sergeant. And he walks into the back of the plane, and they sit up like at attention, which he's a sergeant. You don't. All right. But yeah, he comes out of this weird airplane office, which is not a place on an airplane, and gives some sort of inspirational speech. And I did have some issues with. I don't need it to be like hyper realistic. But they are borrowing so much visually from Band of Brothers and Saving Private Ryan, which are very realistic portrayals of World War II, that it struck me as a sour note that they had these weird like B-movie touches that didn't feel like they were in the right place.
Yeah.
But getting away from cast. Is there anybody else who you want to call out on this cast? I guess Pilu. As I don't know how you say this name in Danish, but in English, I don't think there's a good way to say it. Pilu Asbæk.
I don't know. I was struggling with that one.
Danish dude plays the main bad guy, and good. He's good.
Yeah, he's also he's also a Game of Thrones person.
Who was he in Game of Thrones?
He's Euron Greyjoy.
Oh, no kidding.
Yep.
Well, he's good in that. That's for sure.
So a couple of Game of Thrones folks. He lasts a little longer than our friend,
Grey Worm?
Grey Worm. But yeah, he played a pretty good baddie, I thought.
Yeah, he's a good baddie. He sounds believable when he speaks German, because Danish and German are pretty similar languages. I think even if he doesn't as a person speak German, he was able to make it sound real. They had enough actual Germans in this that the German didn't sound like garbage. So also Mark Rissman, who plays his like second in command, is actually a German guy, and the guy who plays the evil professor, Eric Redman, Dr. Schmidt. Also a real German. So I was grateful. I was grateful that they brought in actual Germans to speak the German and do the German yelling. Otherwise, that's kind of like the main parts of the cast. They do a decent job overall. I just have, I guess, yeah, at the end of the day, I didn't really love this movie.
I thought that if you're looking at it as a B movie from a production point of view, I mean, the editing, there were definitely times, especially the beginning scenes, I just thought that the sort of the effects were so fast and clearly, you know, it's clearly like CGI and really a little bit over the top, which maybe was the intention. I thought the editing and the acting and all of it was in line with and better produced than you see with a lot of these films. I thought it was watchable. The holes are normal holes to have in a kind of movie like this. I thought that it was honestly pretty well done, and the ick factor in terms of the medical experiments and those effects were really well done. I definitely thought that the zombies were terrifying.
Oh God, I
And
jumped out of my freaking seat,
yeah,
which at the movies is always kind of embarrassing.
yeah, I did too, and I heard some people laughing. The funniest thing, not funny, but like in terms of like the film, when I went to see it, I was one of like 5 or 6 people in the theater. I was definitely one of the oldest people there. But oddly enough, there was a very like an elderly couple that came in to see it that were like really into it and like cheering
Badass.
and stuff. So I kind of loved that. That was a great movie watching experience. But I thought that it moved along. I didn't, I wasn't in. There was a couple of places where I felt it was like a little ridiculous, and there were certain things, especially as it related to the scenes in the house with the bad guy, that I felt like, he has all his guys outside. These walls clearly are paper thin because you can hear everything. Like, they're not going to hear some struggle and come in. I thought that was kind of ridiculous. I thought that there was definitely there could be some polishing with some of the writing and some of the things like that. But the zombies, man, I thought that the effects on that stuff was like pretty well done. I also like the little tip of the hat to Dr. Moreau. Did you catch that?
Which one was that?
So so the whole sort of plot point of this is that the Nazis are, doing evil experiments on the villagers of this town. A little bit of a hole because I don't know if they talked about it or not, but they kept talking about this youth and it was the villagers, and I don't know if there was something about this area that they were specifically mining or if it was just them being evil. I don't know, but that's kind of a lot of what the Nazis were. I felt like the editing room lost sort of what that major plot point was, or that secret. Did you hear that as well? Did I miss something? I'm talking about the essence of the villagers working.
He talks about this was always beneath their feet. It just needed to be processed. And you're like, what are you talking about? Is there like water, like magic water down there? Yeah, we never get to see. I felt like
there was something that we missed on that point, but then that's also a very J.J. Abrams thing to do in terms of like never telling you what the actual secret is.
Yeah.
But their whole base is in this sort of church/tower, and the tower is the MacGuffin that they gotta go and blow up. That's the thing that they gotta do.
Yep.
But obviously the sort of ground zero for these Nazi experiments is this church, and below it is this sort of catacomb graveyard thing, as you see in a lot of churches. And our main hero character manages to escape under a grate. And there's a gravestone over the grave that has the last name Moreau on it.
Oh, no, I missed that.
Pay attention, man. Pay attention. But there is definitely an Island of Dr. Moreau feeling about this whole setup. I don't know, like, they're doing all these, like, creepy experiments, and, it's, there's definitely stuff going on in here that it's like, all right, I see what you're doing here, and
it just feels like kind of a mess. Like, it's depending on if people are alive or dead, they come back differently as zombies. Although it turns out that they've not done the alive version until much later in the film. But What is Matilda's aunt? Her name isn't Matilda. I forget what her name is, but that's her the actor's name. The French girl's aunt is home. Like, she was taken to the church, changed in some way. Now she's quote unquote sick. She's clearly like a zombie, but she's not super violent. because she's just
Well,
sitting in
and
her
I
room
mean,
and the door's open. Like there's nothing stopping her from going out of her
well, and
room.
I think that we saw this, at least there's different things that they're doing with them and probably different versions of the serum and
Mm-hmm.
whether they're taking it from them versus, injecting it into them. But we do see what our main hero, Boyce, sees at the beginning, which is that they bring a bunch of the villagers out. They seem very ill and weak, but they also seem grotesque. Like they've got something weird going on with them in the same way that her aunt
Yeah,
does.
but they kill them all. Like that's what I don't
They
understand is
killed them all, so I don't know
why are
why
they
they let
sending some
her
people
go.
home to like live with their
My guess
families?
is my guess is that they sent her home because of she probably bargained for it,
Ah,
trading favors with the evil guy because it's clear that she's been
yeah,
having to have sex with him and stuff. So maybe that's how they got her home.
true.
But it's like, ooh, I don't know that you want her home. Her breathing is really disturbing. So I don't know.
And
There's definitely but as I said, there's like definitely, there's they want you to see how evil the Nazis are. And I was going to say like one of the effects with the woman with just the head and the spinal cord,
good grief.
like talk about Island of Dr. Moreau / Night of the Living Dead spinal cord references. It's like, oh wow, that's impressive. So I don't know. I didn't have an issue with this film. I thought it was a lot of, if you're into this kind of movie, I thought it was a lot of fun. Even with some of the challenges, very, very over the top and very in your face in terms of the tropes. But I thought with the acting and the editing, I thought it was good. And
Yeah, I guess I don't know that you can do a World War II Nazi zombie movie without getting schlocky like this.
right,
But I think that I still prefer Dead Snow to this. I think I prefer a straight horror film, even though that has some comedy elements, to this sort of they so embrace the B movie elements that and I think their plot is messy and it's not super clear, and maybe that some of these are these like mysteries that they want to include, but it just, yeah, it
it
doesn't
felt
feel
a
as
little
polished. It doesn't feel like
there's
as good a story as Dead Snow, which is not a great story either, but still it's better.
well. I don't know that it felt like as great of a story, but I do like what they did with Boyce's character. I liked that, you kind of followed him from the beginning. He was, he had a lot of surprises. Like, I like how they dropped that he speaks French. And so I liked that kind of thing. I definitely liked how they used the kid in a way that wasn't entirely, tropey, or there was a lot of surprising things they did with him. I mean, I don't know if you were, but I was waiting for that kid to turn into a little like weird zombie, or that they were going to be too late for him, and instead they didn't do that with him, and he becomes this sort of interesting little character that only has a few lines but is very present and a big part of the film. So I liked how they did all that kind of thing.
You mean interesting how he like runs into the middle of a firefight?
Well, I mean, he's scared as hell because he's being chased by this thing. I mean, you could see how a kid might lose their head being chased by one of those things.
Yeah, that zombie is legitimately terrifying, and it's probably
Yeah.
like it's the only real dead zombie that we get to spend a lot of time with.
Yeah, and the makeup is impressive.
Chase's character also, or the Chase character also, is a dead zombie, but doesn't stick around for too long, and is clearly
Right.
still going through some sort of transformation when.
Right. He's not fully ripe, so
Fully-
that's probably why they're able to get a jump on him in a way that they can't with this other thing, which just seems unbeatable.
Yeah.
Only killed by like a flamethrower, which is also pretty badass.
I
the
mean,
way
she shoots it in
takes
the
cares
head
of
3 times, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then it's like still coming,
Just-
and it's got that like the way they did the makeup on this guy was like so good.
He
It's
looks
like they
melted.
have it kind of melted over his face, and
One
like,
arm, and his other arm just has those two like arm bones sticking out that basically are like
Yeah.
knives. Yeah, horrifying. And
and the choreo. I mean, I have to say the choreography with the stunts and with these things was well done, and lots of good jump scares. Like I'm cool with this film. I'm not gonna give it too much crap. I enjoyed it.
I'm just saying, out of the 110-minute runtime, I think there were like 25 or 30 good minutes, and I think a lot of the rest of it was this kind of like
Filler.
messy. Well, we're all in this village, and there's like a
Yeah.
hundred Nazis, and there's only 3 or 4 Americans.
I think to tell the story that they were telling, they could have tightened up that timing a little bit more.
I mean, you,
I
you
don't.
can't really cut much more of the movie. Like it's already really
Well,
short.
but you
But you
can
just need
add
to use
in
that time more
yeah, like
sensibly.
there's a lot of stuff where I felt like you could have filled in some things in the script that they chose not to do. In probably in an attempt to make it more of a B movie like thing, possibly. I don't know. But in any case, I think that this was enough fun that people who are into this genre are going to
Yeah,
have a good time with it.
fair. I mean, it is. It's enough fun. It's doing okay in the box office. It's so far this weekend, it's made almost 4 million. The budget was 38 million. I mean, 4 million is not not gonna knock anybody's socks off. I reckon it'll make its money back for sure, and maybe they'll make another one because no, did they leave this open for a sequel? I'm trying to remember. Not really. They kind of
Nope.
left it at like we've won the war, everything's fine.
I was I don't know about you, but I was expecting some after scene to try to set up possibly another sequel, which they didn't have.
Yeah.
So I will say that compared to the movie, and I don't think I mentioned it on the podcast itself, but you and I talked about it separately. But Prospect, which was an indie film that came out like a couple weeks ago, but a very limited release. In fact, you could only see it at one theater in New York. I doubt you can see it where you are. But that had the same budget and a very different film and very different choices. And I would say they went, it's a sci-fi film, but in the ways that they tried to develop certain characters and things like that, similarly they were going for a certain feel, and some of the tropes are probably a little bit similar but also equally enjoyable. So I would say if you can check out that one, I would do it. I don't know that I have a ton more to say about this
No,
particular film.
me neither. I hope that it does fine in the or better in the box office, and I'd welcome another attempt at it. I just think that it does. If they come back to this, I would like to see a little bit of a tighter script. It doesn't need to be shorter. It just needs the parts in between the good parts of this need to be more interesting, and less of this like running back and forth from the safe house to the woods. It just
Yeah,
felt
there was,
like
there
there
was
was
a lot
some,
of random running that just didn't go anywhere.
yeah.
So, I did like, though, I did like when I one of the parts that I think I enjoyed the most was Boyce's discovery of what was happening and how that was filmed and edited and shot. And that whole story I thought was pretty cool. So, he kind of goes, not intending, obviously, to go into this like compound, ends up getting chased by a dog,
Yeah.
ends up like in this truck of bodies, and they kind of like follows him through to see all the horrors that this particular little like house of horrors has in store, and in the meantime gets to figure out where his good friend is and rescues him. I liked that storytelling aspect of it, and I thought that was pretty tight. I think the parts that to me struggled the most were the parts in the house. And all of those things. I don't think you needed to have it sort of like there's a lot of stuff where I know what they were trying to do with the story, but
Well,
I
yeah.
think
I
it
mean
could have
that
been.
in the house scenes where they were developing Wafner to be this, the big bad.
They
So
were, but I don't think. I mean, I just don't think it's not him particularly that I'm having an issue with. It's more the reactions and the things they were trying to do with the American characters, and you're making the Wyatt Russell guy into this sort of like, oh well, he's just as bad as the Nazis kind
yeah,
of a thing,
yeah.
and like I just felt like that was heavy-handed and kind of predictable. Because you knew the minute he starts like punching that guy and trying to torture him, and obviously we know what they're trying to say with this kind of rhetoric, which is like don't become what they are kind of a thing. And obviously with modern day implications, you can kind of get there. It's not too hard, but I felt like those were the things that struggled and were very slow, like, and just could have been done in a way that was a little bit tighter. As you said, there's some sloppiness here that could have been avoided, and I feel like they were almost like, oh, but it's a B film, it's a horror film, let's just go with it, and I don't know. So we'll see. I doubt that there will be a sequel to this. This
Yeah.
seemed to me like just a one-off capsule project that people had fun with.
So,
All right.
AJ, good chat about Overlord, and I hope that anybody listening has either already seen it or doesn't care a hoot about us spoiling major plot elements and goes out and sees it anyway. And then, but next time when we get together on Reanimated, we're going to take a look at another B movie, perhaps the mother of all B movies, with Night of the Comet.
I am going to look forward to watching that again because I watched this probably, oh my gosh, I don't even remember. I want to say I know I watched it with my sister, so it had to be like junior high or high school maybe. So been a long time.
I mean, it's an '80s movie. It might be like it's probably like up there with John Hughes '80s movies.
Yep.
So yeah, we're gonna hit that up next week, and then we're getting into some holiday season, so we might have some weird timing with our podcast. But just roll with us, people.
Yep.
In the meantime, if you want to get at us on Instagram, we don't have an Instagram. If you want to get
No.
at us on Twitter, we're at ReanimatedPcast. ReanimatedPodcast@gmail is our email address, and you can always read our show notes at reanimatedpodcast.com. Additionally, if you want to listen to us through your Alexa device, just be like, hey, Alexa, play the Reanimated Podcast, and it'll play it because we're on TuneIn, just FYI. And if you think about it and want to give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listen to your podcast, go ahead and do that too, because it just gives us a little pat on the back. And maybe you want to feel like giving somebody a pat on the back through the internet.
Yeah.
That's something that happens. Anyway, so yeah, join us again next time on Reanimated, and we will talk more zombies.
Yep. Until next time. Ciao.
Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.